Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Candidates Forum for California Assembly District 21. My name is Eileen Kao, current president of League of Women Voters, Southwest Santa Clara Valley. It covers the city of Campbell, Los Gatos, Monte Sereno, Saratoga, and part of San Jose. For tonight's forum, it is hosted by our league. There are two candidates running for this district, Liz Lawler and Gail Pellerin. Once elected, the term is for 2 years. The forum is organized by our voter service team. I would like to acknowledge them here. Meg Giberson, Linda King, Priya Shastri, Eleanor Eek, and myself. Next slide. So the League is a nonpartisan political organization for men and women, and it has empowering voters and defending democracy for over 100 years since 1920. And there are two roles that we play: voter service, public education, which is what we are doing today, and action advocacy on public policy issues. Please note, the League is a nonpartisan political organization for all people. It does not support or oppose any political parties or candidates. Next. Here are some examples of what we do. Like candidates forums, pros and cons on ballot measures, and we do voter registrations. We participate in Vote 411, which is your one-stop information site for all information that you want about election. And by the way, all candidates forums, including tonight, are recorded and will be posted in full and unedited on our website and the YouTube channels. The League is a grassroots national organization. There are 5 local leagues in Santa Clara County, and most people sign up join the league in their geographic area. However, you are free to join any league you want. And once you are becoming a league, local league, you automatically become a member of all levels in Bay Area, in California, and in US National League. Next one. So by now, you should all have received your ballot, and you will be voting for federal, state, county, local, cities and towns, council and local school district, and the local measures. Please remember to cast your vote. Next one. And once you have made your choices, please remember to seal the envelope, sign your name and date your ballot, and make sure the address is correct. There are 3 ways to return your ballot, either by US mail or drop it off to a secure ballot drop box or go to a vote center. So now I would like to introduce Eleanor Eek, and she's our moderator for tonight's forum. Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you, Eileen, and good evening, everyone. Before we start the actual forum, I would like to inform our audience members about some ground rules that the League of Women Voters follow in all their candidate forums and which candidates have agreed to observe. The League supports the norms of civil discourse, and in that light, the candidates have agreed to follow those norms that were outlined in a document that they received from us. Some examples: candidates have agreed to answer questions that were given to them in their opening and closing statements. They are asked to follow allotted timelines for their answers. And most importantly, not to interrupt each other and to refrain from naming or making personal comments about another candidate. If any candidate fails to follow the league guidelines, they will first be warned, and if the behavior should continue, they would be warned again and possibly asked to leave the forum. And now we are going to move on to our actual forum, and I am pleased to officially welcome and introduce the two candidates for the California Assembly District 28. Candidates, when I say your name, would you please put your video on and make sure that your audio is on too? Liz Lawler. Welcome, Liz. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And Gail Pellerin. Good evening, Gail. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Candidates, we so appreciate your willingness to participate in this virtual forum tonight. During tonight's forum, when the candidates are answering their questions, a timer will appear on the screen, which will demonstrate how much time they have. For their opening and closing statements, they have 90 seconds. For all the other questions, they have 60 seconds. Right now, you're looking at a timer for 90 seconds, and you will notice if we wait for the whole thing to go around, the color changes as you get closer to the end of your time. We do ask our candidates to please be aware of the timer and to observe it. If the stop sign should come on, please finish your thought or finish up in the next couple of words, okay? Thank you so much for demonstrating that, Priya. The forum is scheduled to last approximately 1 hour. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to introduce herself by answering this question. What specifically qualifies you to serve as the California State Assembly person for District 28? We'll begin our questions and we'll ask the candidates. I'll do it in alphabetical order. Since we only have two candidates, we're just going to reverse the order each time. So we'll begin with our candidate, Liz Lawler. After we finish the opening statement, again, we'll move on to those questions that have come in from the community and from league members. And those questions will be answered in 60 seconds. And then we'll end our questions with the closing statement, which asks the question, what question do you wish you would have been asked tonight? Why and how would you have responded? So now, candidates, let's begin officially, and we'll begin with Liz Lawler. If you would answer in your opening statement, what specifically qualifies you to serve as the assembly person for District 28?
Well,
Liz?
thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'm Liz Lawler, and I'm running for State Assembly, District 28, because I believe it's time for real change. As a former mayor and council member, I've directly confronted our community's pressing issues, from the affordable housing crisis to the burdensome regulations that stifle our businesses. I've seen firsthand how Sacramento's policies often lack common sense, and I'm determined to advocate for our community against the one-party rule that has led us astray. As chair of the Better Streets Commission, I focus on enhancing pedestrian and bicycle safety, especially for our children. And I bring a proven record of listening to community concerns and delivering effective solutions. During the pandemic, I ensured our city remained open and continued to provide essential services while supporting our employees' safeties and needs. Our state is at a crossroads. The supermajority is failing us. Recent polls show that 7 out of 10 Bay Area residents feel our quality of life is getting worse, and half are considering leaving. We must address the high cost of living, the housing crisis, and the challenges in our education system where only 36% of students are proficient in math. If elected, I will champion transparency in government, utilize technology to streamline regulations, and create a blue ribbon commission to reform our education system. I promise to put the needs of District 28 first, fighting against the special interests that have long dominated our legislative process. I'm not afraid to stand up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. I will work tirelessly to ensure our community has a brighter future where families can thrive and businesses can succeed. Together, we can build a better tomorrow for District 28. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Gail Pellerin.
Thank you to the League for hosting this candidate forum, and thank you to everyone who's listening in. I have had the great honor of serving as your state representative in District 28 for the past 2 years, And I brought to this position a wealth of knowledge and expertise working in government. I spent 27 and a half years working as the county clerk registrar of voters in Santa Cruz County, where I fought to make sure voting was accessible and that democracy was protected and our election systems were protected as well. And I actually got my start in government working for an assembly member who represented Morgan Hill. And then I went to work in Sacramento for the Speaker's Office of Majority Services. So it's full circle for me to be back now in Sacramento representing you at the state legislature. I've had a great success my first 2 years. My first year, I had 10 bills that were signed into law, many of them dealing with elections issues. And this last year, I think I was one of the top members in getting legislation passed. I had 14 bills signed into law, bills that deal with election integrity, bills that deal with housing, bills that deal with our climate. And, a lot of the ideas that we get come from the district. So I did a bill to ensure that children attending daycare centers are safe from any kind of tragedy. We had a horrific death where 2 toddlers were killed at a swimming pool in a daycare center. So I'm here to listen, to learn from you, and to lead in Sacramento to make sure the 28th Assembly District continues to have a strong voice in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we'll move on to those questions that I mentioned have come in from the community and league members, and the candidates will have 60 seconds to answer the following questions. And we'll begin with you, Ms. Pellerin. So the first question is, what do you consider the top challenges in representing this assembly district?
Well, the thing I hear the most about now is the insurance crisis. So we get hundreds of calls from constituents who are losing their insurance coverage. And I'm in a working group in Sacramento that is dealing with this crisis. So our insurance commissioner is issuing a strategic plan to deal with the insurance crisis, to allow for catastrophic modeling, to bring insurance companies back into the state of California. And it's really extremely unfortunate when communities develop firewise communities and work hard to make their home safe, only to find out that they lose their insurance coverage. We are very actively involved with the FAIR Plan to make sure we get the FAIR Plan coverage for our constituents if they are in a bind. But we're going to be working diligently through this next year to see the strategic plan enforced and to make sure that our insurance companies come back to the state of California to make us whole again. And we also had an insurance crisis in our foster family agencies. I did a bill this year to save our foster kids for 1 more year, and we're working on a solution there.
Thank you. And Ms. Lawler, and if either one of you want me to repeat the question, don't hesitate to ask me to do that. But we'll now move on to Ms. Lawler.
Thank you. Well, the most interesting, the most challenging issue in representing our district, I would say, is housing. And the affordable housing crisis is a self-inflicted problem by policymakers in Sacramento. We have hundreds of housing bills that have been passed, and yet none of them have yielded the affordable housing that we need. Affordable housing is very expensive to build, and it's due to the massive amount of regulations that the legislature has placed upon builders and our communities. We cannot effectively build this. To fix this affordability crisis, we need to lower the cost of building, which means removing the regulatory barriers put in place by the legislature. It means using the most efficient technologies and building in less expensive areas. Things we can do, for example, reform SECRA. That SECRA has been used by cities as a weapon to tie up projects for many, many, many years. We need to reform SECRA. We need to streamline it. We need to make sure that California's green building regulations passed strict cost-benefit analyses. Because right now, we're not building anything. It's too expensive. We need to make sure that it's working. We need to develop inland areas. And all of these things can be done in the legislature and preserve local control.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with you again, Ms. Lawler. The question is, what are your thoughts about supporting this new bill in the legislature, AB 2200, the Guaranteed Health Care for All Act? Ms. Lawler?
Well, I think that the government does not do a very good job of delivering services, and I don't think that we should be, I think healthcare is is a fundamental right. Yes, we all need health care, but I am not sure how we can deliver it effectively. Right now, we are already struggling with Medi-Cal. People have getting access to care is long. It takes a long time. It takes months to get appointments. It takes a long time to get services. And this is critical when you're dealing with illnesses and preventative care. So we really need to look under the hood first and see what's going on with our system to make sure we can deliver that care. And so I don't think that right now what we're doing, what's in the bill, is going to be helpful. But I do think an alternative would be is to provide Medicare for 0 to 18, and then from 65 and over. And so those folks who are of working age between 18 and 65 can go to the private insurance marketplace. I think that there's other solutions out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Pellerin?
Thank you. So we must put patients over profits and the health industry interests. People should not have to decide between paying for prescriptions and putting food on their tables. And one of the biggest changes this year is that all Californians, regardless of immigration status, can now qualify for Medi-Cal if their income meets that eligibility requirement. So this marks a major step towards the state's goal of universal health care. And there were several legislative efforts this year aimed at making healthcare more accessible and more equitable. The Care for All California package included bills that aim to reduce health disparities, improve access to services for children, and address the high healthcare costs. And this includes protections against medical debt, expanding coverage for mental health, which is something that's profoundly impacted my family and something that we're in a healthcare crisis in the mental health space, and increasing access to preventative services. So I think that it is definitely something that we want to see to have more people insured and get our workforce back up and running as well in the healthcare industry.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Pellerin. What are your thoughts, or what thoughts do you have on how best to address the California budget deficit?
So yeah, we had a challenging year. I was very jealous of my colleagues who were serving the year before me when there was a surplus, and then we came in with this budget deficit. So it was a challenging year. What I wanted to make sure that we did is that we did not balance the budget on the backs of our most vulnerable. I did not want to make a cut that would send an individual or a family further into crisis. So we worked extremely hard to set up some systematic changes in our budget to ensure that these most vital programs continue to get funding. We funded transitional pre-K. We put money into our schools and made them whole. We ensured that we have investments in our climate, investments in transportation, investments in public safety, investments in healthcare. And so, you know, it's a difficult time. And I think right now we're seeing more revenue coming in, and that's hopeful. And the budget we did pass was taking into account next fiscal year as well. So I'm hopeful that we will right size our budget in the years ahead.
Thank you. And Ms. Lawler?
Yes, well, I don't envy you at all, Gail, for getting into office and having to deal with that right away. We did go from a surplus to a deficit in a matter of what, less than 2 years. So I can only imagine it's a very difficult thing. And of course, you want to keep essential services. There are very difficult choices that have to be made, but we really need to audit all of the programs that we have that we're sending money to. For example, as we all know, there was an audit that came out that said $21 billion in homelessness funding is no one knows where it went, right? It's unaccounted for. There was 24 billion set aside over the last few years. Only 3 billion they know what's happened to it. 21 billion is lost. This is the kind of waste that we cannot afford if we have a budget deficit. So we need to make sure that we are putting in place that everything is audited, that we are tracking the money. We cannot budget based on a volatile stock market. We've had a new influx of NVIDIA revenues. However, you know, again, by spending money that we don't have, that gets us into trouble. And so we really need to be careful about that.
Thank you. Thank you. And the next question will begin again with you. What are your thoughts on increasing the availability of affordable housing, and how would you do it? How would you propose doing it?
Well, like I said before, affordable housing is expensive to build, and we have failed to produce the housing that we need. We've passed hundreds of housing bills. RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation Program, has failed to provide us the housing that we need. And Sacramento continues to overregulate our building processes, with CEQA and other regulations and green regulations, and it makes it difficult for developers to build. So we need to streamline these. We need to remove these burdens so that we could speed up housing, and we can also open up lands in inland properties. We can allow cities to expand, which is something that they're not allowed to do right now. And we could leverage the use of modular prefabricated homes. There's a lot of things that we could do and maintain local control and give our communities more. I would also suggest that with the RHNA process, it needs to be completely reformed. The counting, there's been questions about the counting, but I also think that rather than leave the responsibility to the cities, perhaps we should shift the responsibility to the counties, who actually are major landowners in the state.
Thank you. Ms. Pellerin?
So yes, we have an affordable housing crisis in this state. It's decades in the making for our failure to build the housing we need to keep up with population. And so we need to streamline housing development approval process. Inclusionary zoning, mixed income housing is an option. Expand affordable housing subsidies and tax credits. Repurpose underutilized land and buildings is really key as well. And invest in public and nonprofit housing. And we also need to keep the folks that are renting in the housing that they have. So we need to have rental protections as well. Myself, I did 2 bills this year, one to streamline and allow for farm worker housing to be built. It's a bill that is for Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County. And it's building upon a bill that Speaker Rivas did, but it wasn't utilized enough. So I made changes to that to ensure that this essential farm worker housing can be built. And I also did a bill to allow for mobile home park expansions, which is another great place for affordable housing. So it's really taking all of us at the state, local, and federal level to address this crisis in California.
Thank you. And a follow-up question that certainly is related to this, but a little bit different. How would you address or begin to address the persistent issue of homelessness within our district and in the state? Ms. Pellerin?
Again, major crisis. I feel like everything that we're talking about is a crisis in California. So we have a horrible homeless situation. The streets are not a waiting room for housing. We have got to get people into the housing they need, the services that they need as well. So there's so many efforts going on right now. I know that we worked in the budget to get money for Santa Cruz County. We had a shelter that was going to close if they didn't get the money. So we got that money in so they can keep it open. And that permanent supportive housing is really where we need to invest our time and our money and our resources to get people off the streets into that safety of being able to lock up yourself at night, lock up your personal belongings during the day, and provide dignity back for folks, and then provide those wraparound services that are so critically needed to allow them to move on to have a thriving and live their best life.
Thank you. Ms. Lawler?
Yes, the homelessness crisis is absolutely tragic. There are far too many people that are suffering, and Prop 47 made that far worse. Government can't solve this on its own, and this requires a public-private partnership. And as I mentioned, our state legislature can't account for $21 billion in homelessness spending, and this is unacceptable when people are suffering. When I speak to folks experiencing homelessness, the two big complaints are shelters are too dangerous, and there is no coordination between the agencies, and that leads to confusion and frustration. Our shelter system is a disaster. They are too few and too dangerous. The $21 billion that the legislature has lost would have been spent well shoring up our shelters and providing secure spaces for these experiencing homelessness. It starts with a safe place to sleep. The Housing First model is a failure. With individual units costing $1 million per door, it's a waste of money. We need to provide help first, get people the care that they need, and passing Prop 36 will absolutely do that and empower the courts to provide, to mandate drug treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question will go back to you, Ms. Lawler. The League of Women Voters is very concerned about money in politics and transparency in government. What's your view on campaign finance reform? And please share with us the top 3 donors to your campaign, both locally and from outside the district.
Well, I am all in favor of campaign finance reform. I think it has gotten completely out of control. And I think I would really like to see that candidates only can be supported by people who they will be representing or that are in their district. I have not done a lot of fundraising this year. It's all been friends of mine, very small donors. So I have a friend from Texas and a couple of friends in town. So I don't really have anything, no big corporations or nobody, no big company or anything like that. So I am my largest donor.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Pellerin?
So yes, I do support campaign finance reform. I'm particularly concerned about these IEs that we're seeing and the amount of money that they could spend. And I do feel like they're putting out information that's not factual, and that's really concerning to me. And so, as the chair of the Assembly Elections Committee, I am definitely working on this issue and hope to work with my colleagues as well. I know there's been a couple bills in the last couple years, but we haven't seen a lot of changes in this area. It's a hard, tough battle to fight. And I have got to tell you, I have not looked at my campaign finance reports, to tell you the truth. I am most proud when I get those $5 donations. I write thank you notes to everybody who contributes to my campaign. But I can say that I get a lot of money from labor organizations, money from women's organizations, money from just local groups and organizations as well. So I'm very grateful for every dollar I get.
Thank you. Assembly District 28 is quite large and diverse geographically, covering urban, rural, mountainous, and coastal areas from Los Gatos down to Santa Cruz and through Santa Cruz. How will you ensure that these many diverse groups in your district will be kept informed, heard, and served by you in the Assembly? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Pellerin.
So I've gotten a lot of practice doing this in the last 2 years. I feel like Assembly District 28 looks like a fist, and I feel like that's what I'm doing in Sacramento, is fighting for you. And I am all over the district, meeting with people in Morgan Hill, meeting with people in the Almaden Valley, up in Cambrian, the Summit area, Montessorino, Los Gatos, Willow Glen, Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley, San Lorenzo Valley, a lot of areas around Corralitos as well, a lot of rural, a lot of urban. So a lot of different issues, but really I think there's more that unites us than divides us. And so we are out in the district. We've done newsletters, we do email blasts, we do town halls, we call them community conversations, a lot of activities around the beauty of our district. So we do hiking trails, we do Paws and Policy, have a dog Darwin, we go to dog parks. And I think it's just really important for me to be out in the district, meeting with people, accessible to people. And you could always call my office and set up an appointment, and I'm happy to meet with anyone.
Thank you. Ms. Lawler?
Well, I would make sure, I think that's great, Gail, obviously, but I would make sure that I am emailing more regularly and making sure people know what bills are on the table and what might be of interest to them, and asking for their opinions on what they think about them. And I would make sure that I am attending council meetings throughout the region. I know Evan Lowe used to do that. I would attend council meetings in every district, and in every city that's in our district, as well as I love the hikes. I'm a hiker myself. And so getting people outdoors and just being really on top of making sure residents know what's going on, what's going to impact them in their communities, and how easy it is for them to reach me and talk to me about it.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will go to you, Ms. Lawler. Extreme climate events and their consequences are increasing. For example, wildfires, floods, heat waves, rising sea levels, saltwater intrusions, and electric grid failures. What should California's top state priorities be in addressing climate change?
Well, thank you, Eleanor. There's no denying that our climate is changing, and it is having a significant impact on California, as we've seen with severity of storms and fires, water, and immigration. Where I differentiate myself from my opponent and others is that I believe we need to have a long-range plan that not only addresses the issues we face today, but most importantly, takes into consideration the practical realities of today, which requires thoughtful transition plans instead of outright bans. We all want a cleaner environment. We all want cleaner air, but it shouldn't be at the expense of common sense. Requiring all electric cars, for example, when we don't have the energy infrastructure in place, is a difficult thing for many people. However, if we required hybrids as a mediary goal, that would allow more people to be able to be on board because they're much more affordable. Things like that. We need to focus on multiple areas of energy. We need to harness all types of energy. We need to adapt to the changes that have already happened and mitigate what we do in the future. And I would take a look at Singapore. It is a model city.
Thank you so much. Ms. Pellerin?
So again, I had the fortune of starting my term in a disaster. So we had atmospheric river after atmospheric river, and I really saw firsthand the impacts of climate change. And we worked diligently to make sure that we had the national disaster declaration, the state disaster declaration, to bring those essential resources to our region. And, we have got to do everything in our power to address the climate issues, the extreme heat, the sea level rise, the carbon emission reductions. We got to meet our 30 by 30 goals and our 2045 goals. And certainly we have the climate bond on the ballot in November. I am supporting that. I think that's going to provide us with essential funds to really do the important work that we need to do around our forest management to prevent wildfires and to build up our infrastructures and to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to address this climate change coming to that we're in the middle of and experiencing.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Pellerin. Tell us something about yourself that most people don't know and how it has impacted you.
Oh, wow. Well, okay, a lot of people know a lot of my personal stories around my husband's suicide, so I won't go there. But one thing is, childcare is a critical issue facing working families everywhere. It particularly impacts women. And one thing people don't want to know about me is when I had young children, I had both kids in childcare, and my whole paycheck went to pay for that childcare. Fortunately, I was in a marriage where there was a dual income, but it was stressful. It was extremely stressful at that time to be able to work full time and to make sure my kids were in safe, quality, affordable childcare. And I see that now as an extreme crisis. It's one of our top issues that our California Legislative Women's Caucus is focusing on, because if we are not able to provide that essential childcare for people, we are not going to have people able to be in our workforce and provide the essential services we need to be our teachers, to be our healthcare providers, to be the people working in our communities. And so I see it as a really critical issue that I want to address.
Thank you. Ms. Lawler?
Well, my son is gay, and he is happily married and got married in Sonoma. And I am all about social issues. I support a women's right to choose, and I obviously support marriage equality in the state of California. I think love is love. How this has changed me, I didn't really know, I didn't suspect it. When he came out to me, it was just sort of an obvious, oh, that's the one piece that was missing about you. So he's really he's the most remarkable person I know, and I love him dearly. And the fact that we have marriage equality in this state is so, so important. And it's really impacted my desire to continue to fight for not only that, for gay rights, for LGBTQ rights, and for a women's right to choose.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, and we'll be back to you, Ms. Lola. Are you satisfied that your district, District 28, is well prepared to manage future wildfires? What would be the process for making additional improvements, if any?
Well, I think the state cannot be asking our communities to build in wildfire urban interface areas. I think that these laws have made it it's impossible for us to comply. We can't do it. We don't have the infrastructure and the water infrastructure and the roads to comply. And I also know that a lot of the volunteer fire departments up in the San Lorenzo Valley area, it's very difficult for them to get around. They've got expensive equipment and they're being bogged down by the regulations that the state continues to impose to have clean energy fire trucks. And to upgrade them costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and new equipment is millions of dollars. And they can't even sell old equipment out of state because there's a glut of California equipment out of state. So we need to exempt our firefighters and our fire departments from clean energy vehicles so that they have the proper tools that they can get up and down mountains and get to those places they need to get to fight fires. And we need to provide them with the resources to do so.
Thank you. Ms. Pellerin?
Well, I'm really supportive of the communities that are creating Firewise communities. I think that's really essential to doing everything you can to protect your home and your neighborhood. And I think we're learning a lot about forest management and the importance of prescribed burns, the importance of having access roads so the firefighters can get to where the fire is starting. And we made sure that CAL FIRE had the funding they need to do their drone, they get the drones out there, they can find the first strike, they can deploy people to get out there to put out that fire immediately. And, I work very closely with our firefighters to make sure they have all the tools that they need to do the best job possible in protecting our communities. Because, fire is a way of life and is something that we've had on our planet for centuries. And it is really horrifying when it hits areas of our district, like Big Basin, the oldest state redwood forest that we have that got burned in the CZU fires. And they are rebuilding and reimagining that. I have a bill to allow for property to be transferred to make their fire management and park more cohesive. So we're hoping to do that.
Thank you. Our next question, and I'll start with you, Ms. Pellerin, is, let me get myself organized here a little bit. What can the state do to implement the well-researched finding that underwater water storage costs less and has greater capacity than above ground reservoirs?
Mm-hmm. Well, water is a key issue. We experienced the floods and we had water in abundance, and then we have the droughts. And, I'm a big fan of the recycled water treatment plants that we have. There's one in Valley Water. Soquel just opened up pure water in Santa Cruz County. It is absolutely critical that we are restoring our groundwater basins to make sure that water is stored in those areas as well. And so we are investing money and resources to ensure that we have a reliable water supply for people. And, but we're also looking, I've also been very much involved in Anderson Dam, the largest reservoir we have in Santa Clara County that would carry more water than all the other reservoirs combined. And that needed to be seismically retrofit. And we're hoping to have that open by 2032. So it's really a combination of everything. We need to have our recycled water. We need to have our groundwater basins restored. We need to have our surface water storage, but we also need to conserve and never forget that every drop counts.
Thank you. Ms. Lawler?
Yes, well, in California, we are constantly in a state of conservation here. And what I would do actually is that we can actually have water abundance in the state of California. This all boils down to a couple of things. One, our forestry practices. When we stopped prescribed burns, when we stopped logging and we stopped cutting down trees, we have allowed trees to proliferate. So 100 years ago in the Sierras, per acre, we would have 10 trees per acre. Now we have over 100 trees per acre. And these trees are sucking up all the water in the natural underground reservoirs of those meadows. They are competing for water. There's not enough and they're dying and they're becoming tinder. And that is that obviously creates forest fires, right? So forestry practice is a big piece of creating water abundance. We do that properly, we can have more water. We also need to make sure that the Sites Reservoir is built. That's an off-stream storage. We passed that, you know what, in the 1950s, still hasn't done anything. Our population has doubled in 40 years, yet we haven't done anything with our water infrastructure. So that said, we can have water abundance, but we need to think outside the box and be smart, and we can do it.
Thank you. Our next question. What are your thoughts on improving public transportation in Silicon Valley? Please try to be specific in your answer. Ms. Lawler?
Well, I think electrifying Caltrain all the way down to Morgan Hill would be a start. I think that focusing on housing along the transportation corridor is a second piece of it. That's where the housing needs to be, like along El Camino Real, places where people can get the bus, they can walk to work, they can get ride shares, they can take Caltrain. That would be the first and foremost. I don't know if ART's going to happen. I know there's just a lot. We have so many regulations that are making this, driving up the cost, making it take longer to build. So I don't know if we'll ever get there, but electrifying Caltrain would be a good start.
Great. Thank you so much. And Ms. Pellerin?
So yes, electrifying Caltrain, I'm really excited to see that happening. And we need more stops in Morgan Hill to get the traffic off of that Highway 101. Bus on Shoulder is also a great program. We're working on that on Highway 1 here in Santa Cruz, and I think that that's critically important. The one thing that I just can't figure out and that impacts so many of us is Highway 17. And especially in the summer when you have the beach traffic going, and Los Gatos is just inundated with those cars that try to use apps to be able to circumvent the traffic that they're seeing on Highway 17. There used to be a suntan special rail line that would take you from San Jose over to the coast, and they blew up the tunnels, and it's just so unfortunate that we didn't have that foresight back when we could have built the rail structure that we would need to move lots of people from point A to point B.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are your priorities in mental health services and legislation? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Pellerin.
So yes, mental health is something that's profoundly impacted my family. My husband died by suicide in November of 2018, and it's an issue that propelled me to run for this office to be a voice and a face for mental health. And I did a bill this year with NUHW to make sure that the Department of Managed Healthcare can easily get records to follow up when people don't get the services they need in behavioral health, so we could streamline that. We need to have, California says they have mental health equity with physical health equity. It's not happening. If I had cancer, I could get in, see a doctor, get an appointment, and get treatment. I have a mental health crisis, and it could be months before I get in to see a behavioral health specialist. We do have 988, which is an incredible resource, and it is being used by so many people calling or texting if you're having a mental health crisis. But we also need to have someone to come. We need 24/7 mobile mental health care. We need a better, robust workforce, people who are trained in how to address behavioral health issues. And we need to continue to work with law enforcement so they have the skills they need to address mental health crises when they're called out.
Thank you. And Ms. Lawler?
Yes, thank you. Yes, gosh, mental health, it's so frustrating that we don't have the resources that we need. We need more adolescent psych wards. We need to have not only that for our young struggling teens and young adults, but we also need a safety net for parents, because to go from a psych ward to home without any kind of tools is very difficult. So there has to be something in between. And actually, that's why I am excited about Prop 35, because it requires that 99% of the funding goes directly to medical purposes. And that includes funding for mental health care. That includes training for new health professionals, whether they're LVNs, RNs, or practitioners. So this will be really helpful in creating that direct patient care with respect to mental health care. So I think we're moving in the right direction on that. I'd like to see more. Thanks.
Thank you. Next question, we'll begin with you, Ms. Lawler. What are your views on the citizen initiative process that we have here in California, the pros and cons of it?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. I think we need to have a citizens initiative. I mean, this is a democracy after all. And if our citizens can't get signatures to put a ballot on the measure, then what is the point? You know, I think if the assembly can put ballot measures on the ballot, then certainly citizens can. And I think that we need to be able to do that. That's how we have a voice.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Pellerin?
I have a lot of experience in this area with a lot of citizen initiatives that I've processed over the years. I definitely support this democratic process to do a citizen initiative. I do feel like we do sometimes need to get regulations around it and to make sure we know who's funding it and that that's disclosed when you're out collecting signatures. So we've done a lot of laws to streamline and to make sure all the information is on that initiative so people can be informed if they're going to sign it. And you know, there are people that get very aggressive in collecting signatures, and I think that that is a problem as well. And sometimes what is proposed in a citizen initiative is really through some big corporation trying to pass something through to the voters, and it's not scrutinized. So I'd like to see, you know, maybe a public hearing on it, just so all stakeholders can have a say and help to draft an initiative that really is something that can be implemented and could be workable in the state of California.
Thank you. Our next question, and actually I think it was alluded to in the very beginning, a recent poll conducted or concluded that over half of the state's population wishes to leave and live elsewhere. What can the Assembly do to address this issue? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Pellerin.
Well, we need to make sure that people can afford to live where they're working, and we need to make sure that they have good jobs that they can afford to, you know, live, put food on their table, provide their family with health care, mental health care, education. So it's really all about those quality of life issues. We need to also make sure that our streets are safe, that people feel safe in their community. And so I think that the Assembly is definitely working on all these issues and making California, you know, we're the fourth, sometimes they say the fifth or fourth largest economy in the world. That means we have the money here and we need to be spending it wisely and making California as great as a place to live as possible. We really do provide it all. We have beautiful beaches and forests and farmland, and it's really a bounty of a state. And I think that we just need to make sure that people can afford to live here and thrive.
Thank you. And Ms. Lawler?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is we are overregulated. We have over 420,000 regulations in the state of California. That's more than double the national average. 20,000 of those are new since 2022. So if you want all of these regulations, what they do is they drive up the cost of living. They drive up the cost of goods, fuel, everything. If you drive up the cost of fuel, it drives up the cost of all of your goods, all of your consumer goods. We have things like the fast food wage bill, where we raise the minimum wage. Hey, great. We want everybody to be able to afford things. But what that did is it just passed the cost on to the consumer. It raised the prices in food. We had Rubio's close 40 restaurants and the 10,000 jobs that went with it. So it all boils down to we are overregulated and we need to reduce regulations. And I would work hard to reduce those regulations and taxes to make sure that the residents of our district and Californians have more money in their wallet and more purchase power. If that's the case, then they will want to stay here and then they can thrive.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our questions that came in through the registration process or the community. And we're going to move on to your closing statements. And I'm going to ask each one of you again to respond to the question. What question do you wish we had asked you tonight? Why? And how you would have responded? And I also like to encourage candidates that this is an opportunity for you to get something out about yourself and what you believe in or your areas of focus that maybe have not come out tonight in the other questions. So we're going to do it reverse from the opening. So we're going to begin with Ms. Pellerin, and you have 90 seconds for this question.
Great. Thank you so much. I always love this question. So my question I would ask would be, how have I helped protect the sanctity of elections and our democracy while in office? So my entire adult life has been around fighting for democracy, making sure people have access to voting and that it's a pleasant experience, that it's understandable, it's accessible, it's secure, it's transparent. And I think it is so critically important that all voices be heard. And I get so discouraged when I see low voter turnout numbers because there's really no excuse not to vote. We have done so many changes in California to ensure that people have a ballot mailed to them, or they can choose to vote in person. They can vote early at any location that they have in their county that's available to them. And returning your ballot is easy. Postage is paid. You could drop it in the mail or a drop box. If you're overseas or in the military, we have remote accessible vote by mail balloting. We have balloting for people who are visually impaired and people who are physically impaired, making sure that anyone and everyone can vote. I've done a number of pieces of legislation around this, one that would ban AI around elections, another one that made sure that every county in the state of California used a state certified, federally qualified voting system. We had a county up in the north that tried to throw out their voting system. I did a bill to ensure that people can easily get a second ballot, ensure that in a primary presidential election, it's clear if you don't have the office of president on your ballot. So making sure voters have all the information they need, correct factual information, is critically important.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Lawler.
Well, thank you. I would have been like to ask about my priorities. And I just want to say that election integrity does not come into the top 10 of top issues in California. So my priorities are those of our district residents, not my personal interests. The number one issue in our district is the high cost of living, a direct result of policies enacted by the Democratic supermajority. I will leverage AI to cut through the redundant and costly regulations that make building homes, owning businesses, and simply living in California nearly impossible. I will reform the RHNA process and CEQA to ensure that housing can actually be built, unleashing the free market while preserving local control. My second priority is to ensure that all children, especially those in low-income communities, have access to a world-class education. I will establish a Blue Ribbon Commission on education that includes parents, educators, and students. Together, we will develop 21st century solutions that harness the power of the free market and technological innovations to reform our failing education system. My third priority is to eliminate government waste. I will ensure that every dollar spent is accounted for and that we understand its impact. It's unacceptable that our legislature has lost track of $21 billion in homelessness spending. With nearly 2,000 bills introduced each year, many are merely resume padding or duplicative. Almost half become law, often without benefiting you. I will work to eliminate bill waste by ensuring all legislation includes a sunset clause and mandatory performance reviews. Our policy should be effective, not just window dressing. Together, we can tackle these priorities and create a better future for District 28. Thank you.
And thank you, candidates. We so appreciate your coming tonight and participating. When it's a two-person panel, there's a lot of questions going back and forth. So again, we appreciate your coming and your cooperation and your willingness to share your thoughts with the audience and with the public in general. And audience members, we hope that you have learned a lot tonight that will help you when you are making your decisions about voting. And now our league president, Eileen Cowell, will remind you of some important election facts to conclude. Eileen?
Well, thank you, Eleanor, and thank you, candidates. Again, here's a gentle reminder that election is on November 5th, 2024. So please remember to sign your ballot envelope exactly the same way as when you register to vote. And remember to return your ballot. So please use Vote 411 as your main site for all your election information. And in addition, there are more, next slide. There are more nonpartisan election resources that you should be able to check out. And look at this Easy Voter Guide. It was produced by League of Women Voters California League, and it is available in 5 languages. So please use these resources. And next one. So lastly, thank you, audience and the candidates. We hope this forum was informative and has helped you in making your decisions. This forum was recorded and will be posted in full and unedited on our website and on YouTube channels. The link will be sent to your email address in the next few days. So in closing, the League wishes to remind all citizens that democracy is not a spectator sport. Everyone who can should vote. Thank you and good night.
Right.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank you.
Thank you.